Classical music filled the hall of the Museum of Modern Art in London with an elegance that Raphael Miller feigned to appreciate. He adjusted the knot of his Italian tie, observing the guests circulating among contemporary sculptures and champagne flutes. This type of charity event was part of the package when one reached the top of London's civil construction scene, smiling, shaking hands, making generous donations, and returning home alone, as always. Raphael was 38 years old and commanded Miller Engineering, a construction company he had built from scratch. The son of a seamstress and a bricklayer who abandoned him, as a child, Raphael had transformed anger and necessity into fuel. By 25, he was already leading his first project. By 30, he owned his own business. By 35, his buildings already marked the skyline of southwest London. But on that Saturday night, surrounded by important people, he felt the familiar emptiness that not even the latest multi-million-pound contract had managed to fill. That's when he saw her. Marianne Alistair was a few meters away, chatting animatedly with a group near a light installation. Raphael's heart raced in a way it hadn't in exactly 3 years. She wore a navy blue dress that accentuated her elegant posture, her brown hair pulled back in an impeccable bun. She was exactly as he remembered, yet at the same time different. More mature, perhaps. More distant, certainly. 3 years. 1,095 days since Marianne had last left his apartment, carrying 2 suitcases and an expression of weariness that still haunted him. Raphael remembered every word of that final argument. She had pleaded for attention, for presence, for a man who wasn't always glued to his phone answering construction emails. He had promised to change, as always. She hadn't believed him, any more as always. Raphael grabbed a glass just to have something in his hands and walked in the opposite direction, trying to process the surprise. Marianne was in London. He imagined she had followed through with her plans to move to Edinburgh, where an important gallery had invited her to work. But there she was, radiant and seemingly happy, on his territory. It took him less than 5 minutes to discover the reason. One of the construction company's partner architects, who also frequented these events, approached him with a conspiratorial smile. "Did you see who's here? Marianne Alistair. She came back to London about 8 months ago. She became the curator of the contemporary art space at the Barrett Institute. And look, she's engaged to Philip Barrett. You know the Barretts, don't you? A traditional family, owners of that century-old textile industry." Raphael felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. Engaged. The word echoed in his mind like a funeral bell. He looked for Marianne again, and only then noticed the diamond ring on her finger. Beside her, a blond man of approximately 40, in an impeccable suit and aristocratic posture, held her hand with familiarity. Philip Barrett had the kind of face one saw in traditional business magazines, that air of someone who never had to fight for anything, because everything was already guaranteed by his surname. Raphael watched the two from afar, unable to look away. Philip said something, and Marianne smiled, but it was a polite, controlled smile. It wasn't the wide, genuine smile Raphael had known, the one that lit up her entire face when they watched bad movies on the sofa or when he finally managed to get home before 10 at night. He hadn't seen that smile in years, not even when they were still together. Someone called his name, but Raphael barely registered it. His mind was already working at full speed, analyzing the situation as he did with complex engineering projects. Marianne was back. She was engaged. But she wasn't happy. He knew that woman too deeply not to notice the difference. There was something extinguished in her, a light missing from the brown eyes he had loved so much. The penny began to drop slowly, like a controlled demolition he had supervised dozens of times. All those years building empires, erecting towers, conquering multi-million-pound contracts. For what? To return every night to an empty apartment in Canary Wharf, dine alone ordering delivery, sleep 4 hours and start over. He had success. He had money. He had respect in the market. But he had nothing that truly mattered. He didn't have Marianne. The therapist he had started seeing a few months ago, more at his sister's insistence than his own volition, kept saying he used work as an escape. Raphael always retorted that work wasn't an escape when you built something real, when you created jobs, when you transformed urban landscapes. but at that moment observing the only woman he had ever truly loved wearing a ring that hadn't come from him, the penny dropped with the weight of a concrete beam. He was empty, and always had been. Marianne turned towards him, almost as if she felt the weight of his gaze. Their eyes met for an interminable second. Raphael saw shock pass across her face, surprise followed by something he couldn't identify. Fear? Anger? Sadness? Before he could decipher it, she looked away and gently pulled Philip by the arm, guiding him to another area of the hall. Raphael remained still, holding the champagne flute he had no intention of drinking. Around him, people continued chatting, laughing, networking. Life followed its normal course for everyone, except for him. Later, already at home, Raphael couldn't sleep. He stood on the apartment balcony, watching the city lights, thinking about how he had gotten there. 38 years old, an 8-figure net worth, a solid company, and completely alone. He picked up his phone and opened Instagram for the first time in months. He found Marianne's profile without difficulty. Recent photos showed art exhibitions, vernissages, some travel records. And yes, there were photos with Philip, many of them. The engagement announcement had been made 2 months ago at a discreet party at the Barrett family home in an affluent neighborhood. Raphael read the comments. Congratulations. Best wishes. What a beautiful couple. He closed the app before doing something stupid, like liking an old photo, or worse, sending a message. Marianne Alistair. The woman he had met at a corporate event 5 years ago when she was still just an art enthusiast, trying to make a name for herself in the market. He remembered the conversation, how she spoke about art's ability to capture emotions that words couldn't reach. Raphael, always practical, had found it too romantic, almost naive. But he had been enchanted nonetheless. Their relationship started quickly and intensely. In the first few months, Raphael had genuinely tried to balance work and relationship. But as the company grew, priorities shifted. Cancelled dinners, sacrificed weekends, forgotten birthdays. Marianne endured for 3 years, always hoping the difficult phase would pass, that he would finally keep his promises to slow down, until she couldn't take it anymore. Raphael never blamed her for the decision to leave. How could he? He knew exactly the kind of boyfriend he had been. Absent, distracted, always with half his mind on some construction problem, promising changes that never came. Marianne deserved more. She deserved someone present, someone who would put her first. Someone like Philip Barrett, apparently. The thought brought a pang of jealousy that Raphael hadn't felt in years. Jealousy mixed with regret, with self-anger, with a sudden and painful clarity. He had lost the only person who truly mattered, and now she was about to marry another man. Raphael walked to his home office and turned on the computer. He researched Philip Barrett and his family. What he found was exactly what he expected. Tradition, old money, century-old companies. Philip had taken over as president of Barrett Textiles 5 years ago, succeeding his father. There were some articles about modernizing the industry, international partnerships, market expansion. All very formal, very safe, very predictable. It was everything Raphael was not, and probably everything Marianne needed after 3 years with a workaholic who had repeatedly disappointed her. He turned off the computer and went back to the balcony. The London sky began to lighten, bringing the promise of another Sunday. Raphael had meetings scheduled in the afternoon to review projects for the new commercial tower in the city. He had proposals to analyze. He had suppliers to pressure. He had 1,000 things he always had. But for the first time in years, none of it seemed important. Only one thing occupied his mind. A decision was forming, still nebulous, still frightening. Raphael Miller was not a man to give up. He had built an empire literally with his own hands. He had overcome obstacles that would bring down men twice as strong, and now he faced the biggest challenge of his life, to win back Marianne Alistair. 6 months. That was the time it usually took between engagement and wedding in the social circles she now frequented. Maybe less, maybe more. But Raphael was sure of one thing as he watched the sun rise over the city he had helped build, but which had never truly made him happy. He would not let Marianne marry Philip Barrett without at least trying to show her who he could be, who he should have been from the start. not with manipulations or dirty tricks, but by truly changing, proving that the man who had disappointed her could become the man she deserved. And it would all start next Monday with a call Raphael had been putting off for months. To the therapist he had only visited 3 times, always finding excuses to cancel subsequent sessions. This time would be different. This time he would truly commit to change. Because for the first time in his life, Raphael Miller understood a fundamental truth. It didn't matter how many buildings he built if he couldn't build a life worth living. And that life, he now knew with absolute certainty, only made sense with Marianne in it. Monday arrived with the typical London hustle and bustle. Raphael woke up at 6 in the morning, but this time he didn't immediately dive into emails. He lay there for a few more minutes, organizing his thoughts. The decision made on Sunday still pulsed firmly in his chest. He would call the therapist. The real change would begin. And he would find a way to approach Marianne without seeming desperate or intrusive. The appointment was scheduled for Thursday afternoon. Dr. Helen Foster saw patients in a discreet office in Mayfair. Raphael had chosen her months ago on the recommendation of his sister Beatrice, who had insisted he needed to treat what she called his work addiction. At the time, Raphael had found the term exaggerated. Now he wasn't so sure. In the following days, Raphael maintained his work routine, but began to observe his own patterns more carefully. He noticed how he compulsively checked his phone, how his mind drifted to construction problems even during casual conversations, how anxious he became when he wasn't solving something. The therapist was right. Beatrice was right. Marianne had always been right. On Thursday, promptly at 4 in the afternoon, Raphael was sitting in the waiting room of the office. Dr. Helen, a woman in her 50s with a penetrating gaze and calm voice, greeted him with a discreet smile. "Raphael, what a pleasant surprise. I thought you wouldn't come back," she said, without judgment in her voice. "I thought so too," Raphael admitted, settling into the armchair. "But some things have changed." During the next hour, he told her everything. The reunion with Marianne, her engagement, the sudden clarity about the emptiness in his life, the decision to truly change, not just for her, but for himself. Dr. Helen listened attentively, asking pointed questions without offering easy solutions. "Raphael, you're talking about a profound transformation," she said at the end. "It's not about winning back a woman. It's about understanding why you use work as a shield. It's about facing the pain you've carried since your father left. It's about learning to be present, not just physically, but emotionally." Raphael swallowed hard. Talking about his father was always difficult. Arthur Miller had abandoned the family when Raphael was just 7 years old, leaving his mother, Mrs. Celia, alone with 2 young children. The man had simply disappeared, without explanation, without looking back. Mrs. Celia had worked to exhaustion as a seamstress to raise her children. Raphael had grown up, determined to be everything his father wasn't: responsible, hard-working, present. Ironically, he had become absent in another way. "I'm not like him," Raphael said defensively. "No, you're not, but you carry the wounds he left," Helen replied gently. "And those wounds shaped your choices. You work obsessively because you need to prove your worth, that you're not like your father. But in the process, you ended up repeating the pattern of absence, just in a different way." The words hurt because they were true. Raphael left the office with a heavy head, but also with something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Helen had scheduled weekly sessions for the coming months. It would be a long process, she warned, no shortcuts, no guarantees. Meanwhile, Raphael needed to find a way to approach Marianne. He couldn't just reappear in her life without reason. He needed a pretext, something natural. The answer came through Beatrice. His sister, a literature professor and great art enthusiast, casually mentioned during a family lunch the following Sunday that she was going to a new exhibition at the Barrett Institute. Raphael felt his heart quicken. "Can I come with you?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Beatrice raised an eyebrow. "You? At an art exhibition? Raphael, you haven't set foot in a museum since Mum dragged us when we were kids." "I'm trying to expand my horizons," he replied, and it wasn't a lie. "Besides, it's time I supported your activities more." His sister studied him for a moment, suspicious, but eventually agreed. "All right, it's next Wednesday at 7 in the evening. But if you're glued to your phone, I'll kill you." Raphael smiled. "I promised to pay attention." The following week dragged on. Raphael forced himself to delegate more tasks, to trust his team, not to micromanage every detail of every project. It was difficult, sometimes agonizing, but he persisted. In sessions with Helen, they explored his control issues, his fear that everything would collapse if he wasn't personally supervising. "You've built a solid company, Raphael. You have competent professionals, but if you died tomorrow, the company would continue to function. That doesn't diminish your importance. It just shows you've done a good job building a team," Helen pointed out in one of the sessions. The idea that he wasn't indispensable was both liberating and terrifying. Wednesday finally arrived. Raphael dressed carefully, choosing a casual blazer over a white shirt and dark jeans. Nothing too formal. Nothing that looked like excessive effort. Beatrice picked him up at 6:30. "You're nervous," she observed as soon as he got into the car. "Am I?" Raphael feigned disinterest. "Your fingers are drumming on your knee. You only do that when you're nervous. What's going on, Rafa?" Raphael sighed. There was no point lying to Beatrice. She always saw through him. "Marianne will be there. She works at the Institute now." Beatrice stopped at a red light and turned to face him. "Ah, so that's it. Raphael, she's engaged." "I know. And you still love her?" It wasn't a question, but Raphael answered anyway. "Always have. I was just too much of an idiot to show it when I had the chance." His sister sighed. "Look, I loved you and Marianne together. You made sense. But you hurt her a lot, Rafa. And if she's found someone who makes her happy, you have no right to interfere." "I won't interfere. I just want a chance to show that I've changed. If she still chooses to be with him, I'll respect that." Beatrice didn't seem convinced, but she didn't argue further. The rest of the journey passed in silence. The Barrett Institute occupied a historic mansion in Kensington, renovated to house contemporary art exhibitions. When Raphael and Beatrice entered, the vernissage was already crowded. Artists, critics, collectors, and enthusiasts circulated among the works, wine glasses in hand, lively conversations echoing through the space. Raphael saw her almost immediately. Marianne was near the entrance, talking with a group of older people, probably important collectors. She wore a moss-green dress that enhanced her eyes, her hair loose over her shoulders. She looked beautiful and professional, gesturing animatedly as she explained something about the exhibition. Raphael forced himself to look away and follow Beatrice through the gallery. They observed the works, vibrant abstract paintings, exploring themes of identity and belonging. Beatrice commented on each piece with enthusiasm. Raphael tried to pay attention, really tried, but his eyes kept searching for Marianne in the room. She finally noticed him when he was standing before a particularly large canvas, pretending to study it deeply. Raphael felt the weight of her gaze even before turning his head. When their eyes met, he offered a small, almost shy smile. Marianne hesitated, clearly surprised to see him there, but returned the nod with a slight movement of her head before returning her attention to the people she was talking to. "You're being too obvious," Beatrice whispered beside him. "Relax. Enjoy the art. If a conversation is going to happen, it will happen naturally." Raphael nodded, swallowing his anxiety. He took a glass of white wine offered by a waiter and genuinely tried to concentrate on the works. Surprisingly, one of the paintings truly captivated him. It was a chaotic urban landscape. Buildings rising at impossible angles, lit windows forming patterns that looked like codes. There was something both familiar and disturbing about it. "Interesting, isn't it?" Marianne's voice behind him made him turn quickly. She was a few steps away, alone, holding a clipboard. "It's called Modern Babel. The artist wanted to represent loneliness in big cities, how we can be surrounded by millions of people and still be completely isolated." Raphael swallowed hard. It was the first time they had spoken in 3 years. "It makes sense," he said, keeping his voice controlled. "That's exactly how London feels sometimes." Marianne studied him for a moment, as if searching for something in his face. I didn't know you were interested in art." "I'm trying to expand my horizons," Raphael replied, echoing the words he had said to Beatrice. "I realized I spent too much time focused only on work. I'm trying to change that." She raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "Changes take time, Raphael. I've heard enough promises." The coolness in her voice hurt more than Raphael expected, but he deserved it. "I know, and you have every right not to believe me. But this time is different." "Why?" Raphael could have lied, could have given a safe, vague answer. But he decided on honesty. "Because I finally understood what I lost, and I understood that I need to change for myself, not just for someone else. I'm in therapy. For real this time." Marianne seemed surprised. "Therapy?" "Twice a week. I'm working on my issues. The workaholism, the stuff with my father, everything." For a moment something shifted in her expression. The hardness gave way to something softer, perhaps curiosity, perhaps the lingering affection she had once felt for him. But then she recomposed herself, raising her barriers again. "I'm happy for you, Raphael, truly. Everyone deserves to know themselves better and improve," she said too formally. "But I need to get back to work, enjoy the exhibition." She walked away before Raphael could respond, leaving him standing there, alone before the modern Babel. Beatrice appeared beside him seconds later. "How did it go?" she asked. "Painful, but it's a start," Raphael replied, his eyes still following Marianne across the hall. In the following weeks, Raphael established a routine that would surprise anyone who knew him. He started his days with walks in Hyde Park, something he had never done before. Then he worked intensely from 8 to noon, had a leisurely lunch, resumed work from 2 to 5, and stopped. Simply stopped. He didn't take work home. He didn't answer construction calls after 6 in the evening, except for real emergencies. And he discovered, to his surprise, that the company didn't collapse. The partners and managers found it strange at first, but quickly adapted to the new dynamic. Raphael delegated more, trusted more, and realized that his team was much more competent than he had given them credit for. In sessions with Dr. Helen, they explored how his perfectionism and need for control were rooted in the fear of abandonment. If he controlled everything, nothing could go wrong. If he worked tirelessly, he would prove his worth. If he never stopped, he wouldn't have time to feel the pain. "You built a solid company, Raphael. You have competent professionals. But if you died tomorrow, the company would continue to function. That doesn't diminish your importance. It just shows you did a good job building a team," Helen pointed out in one of the sessions. The idea that he wasn't indispensable was both liberating and terrifying. Wednesday finally arrived. Raphael dressed carefully, choosing a casual blazer over a white shirt and dark jeans. Nothing too formal, nothing that looked like excessive effort. Beatrice picked him up at 6:30. "You're nervous," she observed as soon as he got into the car. "Am I?" Raphael feigned disinterest. "Your fingers are drumming on your knee. You only do that when you're nervous. What's going on, Rafa?" Raphael sighed. There was no point lying to Beatrice. She always saw through him. "Marianne will be there. She works at the Institute now." Beatrice stopped at a red light and turned to face him. "Ah, so that's it. Raphael, she's engaged." "I know. And you still love her?" It wasn't a question, but Raphael answered anyway. "Always have. I was just too much of an idiot to show it when I had the chance." His sister sighed. "Look, I loved you and Marianne together. You made sense. But you hurt her a lot, Rafa. And if she's found someone who makes her happy, you have no right to interfere." "I won't interfere. I just want a chance to show that I've changed. If she still chooses to be with him, I'll respect that." Beatrice didn't seem convinced, but she didn't argue further. The rest of the journey passed in silence. The Barrett Institute occupied a historic mansion in Kensington, renovated to house contemporary art exhibitions. When Raphael and Beatrice entered, the vernissage was already crowded. Artists, critics, collectors, and enthusiasts circulated among the works, wineglasses in hand, lively conversations echoing through the space. Raphael saw her almost immediately. Marianne was near the entrance, talking with a group of older people, probably important collectors. She wore a moss-green dress that enhanced her eyes, her hair loose over her shoulders. She looked beautiful and professional, gesturing animatedly as she explained something about the exhibition. Raphael forced himself to look away and follow Beatrice through the gallery. They observed the works, vibrant abstract paintings exploring themes of identity and belonging. Beatrice commented on each piece with enthusiasm. Raphael tried to pay attention, really tried, but his eyes kept searching for Marianne in the room. She finally noticed him when he was standing before a particularly large canvas, pretending to study it deeply. Raphael felt the weight of her gaze, even before turning his head. When their eyes met, he offered a small, almost shy smile. Marianne hesitated, clearly surprised to see him there, but returned the nod with a slight movement of her head before returning her attention to the people she was talking to. "You're being too obvious," Beatrice whispered beside him. "Relax. Enjoy the art. If a conversation is going to happen, it will happen naturally." Raphael nodded, swallowing his anxiety. He took a glass of white wine offered by a waiter and genuinely tried to concentrate on the works. Surprisingly, one of the paintings truly captivated him. It was a chaotic urban landscape, buildings rising at impossible angles, lit windows forming patterns that looked like codes. There was something both familiar and disturbing about it. "Interesting, isn't it?" Marianne's voice behind him made him turn quickly. She was a few steps away, alone, holding a clipboard. "It's called Modern Babel. The artist wanted to represent loneliness in big cities, how we can be surrounded by millions of people and still be completely isolated." Raphael swallowed hard. It was the first time they had spoken in 3 years. "It makes sense," he said, keeping his voice controlled. "That's exactly how London feels sometimes." Marianne studied him for a moment as if searching for something in his face. "I didn't know you were interested in art." "I'm trying to expand my horizons," Raphael replied, echoing the words he had said to Beatrice. "I realized I spent too much time focused only on work. I'm trying to change that." She raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "Changes take time, Raphael. I've heard enough promises." The coolness in her voice hurt more than Raphael expected, but he deserved it. "I know, and you have every right not to believe me. But this time is different." "Why?" Raphael could have lied, could have given a safe, vague answer, but he decided on honesty. "Because I finally understood what I lost. And I understood that I need to change for myself, not just for someone else. I'm in therapy. For real this time." Marianne seemed surprised. "Therapy?" "Twice a week. I'm working on my issues, the workaholism, the stuff with my father, everything." For a moment something shifted in her expression. The hardness gave way to something softer, perhaps curiosity, perhaps the lingering affection she had once felt for him. But then she recomposed herself, raising her barriers again. "I'm happy for you, Raphael, truly. Everyone deserves to know themselves better and improve," she said too formally. "But I need to get back to work. Enjoy the exhibition." She walked away before Raphael could respond, leaving him standing there alone before the modern Babel. Beatrice appeared beside him seconds later. "How did it go?" she asked. "Painful. But it's a start," Raphael replied, his eyes still following Marianne across the hall. In the following weeks, Raphael established a routine that would surprise anyone who knew him. He started his days with walks in Hyde Park, something he had never done before. Then he worked intensely from 8 to noon, had a leisurely lunch, resumed work from 2 to 5 and stopped, simply stopped. He didn't take work home. He didn't answer construction calls after 6 in the evening, except for real emergencies. And he discovered, to his surprise, that the company didn't collapse. The partners and managers found it strange at first, but quickly adapted to the new dynamic. Raphael delegated more, trusted more, and realized that his team was much more competent than he had given them credit for. In sessions with Dr. Helen, they explored how his perfectionism and need for control were rooted in the fear of abandonment. If he controlled everything, nothing could go wrong. If he worked tirelessly, he would prove his worth. If he never stopped, he wouldn't have time to feel the pain. "But you need to feel, Raphael," Helen would say. "You need to process the anger, the hurt, the grief for the father you never had. As long as you run from it through work, you'll keep repeating the same patterns. Raphael began to frequent more cultural events, exhibitions, plays, even an opera that left him confused but strangely touched. And whenever possible, he chose events at the Barrett Institute, not to pursue Marianne, he told himself, but because he was genuinely learning to appreciate art. The fact that he occasionally ran into her was just a coincidence. On the few occasions they met, they exchanged polite greetings. Marianne maintained a professional distance, but Raphael noticed that she watched him when she thought he wasn't looking. He noticed her discreet surprise when he demonstrated real knowledge about the works, when he asked intelligent questions to the artists, when he lingered contemplating a piece. He wasn't faking it. He really was discovering a connection with art he never imagined having. Philip Barrett occasionally appeared at these events, always impeccable, always courteous, always bored. Raphael observed him with a mixture of envy and pity. The man had Marianne, had the ring on her finger, had the promise of a future together. But he seemed completely oblivious to the jewel he possessed. He treated Marianne with distant affection, as if she were a beautiful piece of decoration, admirable but not essential. It was at one of these events that Raphael gathered his courage. It was early May, an exhibition on contemporary British photography. Marianne was alone, making notes on her clipboard when Raphael approached. "Marianne, can I speak with you for a moment? In private?" She looked up, hesitant. "Raphael, I don't think that's a good idea. Please, just a few minutes. I promise I won't cross any lines." After a moment of hesitation, she agreed. They went out to the Institute's inner garden, where some sculptures were displayed under the stars. The May air was fresh and pleasant. "What do you want, Raphael?" she asked, crossing her arms defensively. "I want to apologize, truly, for the man I was when we were together, for the broken promises, for your 30th birthday that I ruined by getting stuck in a meeting I could have rescheduled, for all the times I chose work over you, for making you feel unimportant when you were the most important thing in my life." Marianne blinked, clearly not expecting that. "Raphael, that was 3 years ago. I've moved on. You should do the same." "Have you moved on? Truly?" Raphael took a step forward cautiously. "Because when I see you, I don't see the same light in your eyes. I don't see that smile that used to light up entire rooms. I see someone behaving correctly, doing everything expected, but I don't see you truly happy." "You don't know me anymore," she replied, but her voice trembled slightly. "You have no right to make assumptions about my happiness." "You're right. I'm sorry. I just wanted you to know that I'm changing. Not for you, although you're an important part of the motivation, but for me. Because I realized I was living an empty life. Work, work, and more work. For what? To die alone in an apartment full of trophies that mean nothing." Marianne looked at him for a long moment. "I'm happy you're taking care of yourself. But Raphael, I'm engaged. I'm getting married in 6 months to a good man. Who respects me, who is present, who won't forget my birthday because he's closing a deal. Does Philip love you?" The question slipped out before Raphael could hold it back. Marianne opened her mouth, then closed it. "That's none of your business." "And do you love him?" "Raphael, stop. Just answer me this and I promise I won't bother you again. Do you love him the way you once loved me?" Tears welled up in Marianne's eyes. "You have no right to ask me that. You have no right to come back now after 3 years and mess everything up. I was fine, I was moving on, building a stable life with someone reliable. Stable and reliable, yes, but not passionate, not vibrant, not real." Raphael knew he was crossing lines, but he couldn't stop. "Mari, I messed everything up. I know that. But if there's a chance, even a tiny one, that you still feel something, if there's a doubt in your heart about this marriage, please, don't ignore it." "I need to go," Marianne said, wiping away her tears quickly. "You shouldn't have said that. You shouldn't have come back." She practically ran back into the institute. Raphael remained in the garden, standing among the sculptures, feeling both terrible and strangely hopeful. He had planted the seed of doubt. Now he could only wait. In the following days, Raphael did not attempt contact. He respected Marianne's space. But he continued his personal transformation. He continued therapy. He started doing activities he had always put off. He accepted his sister's invitation to family dinner every Friday at his mother's house. Mrs. Celia, now 70, was radiant to see her son more present. "You're different, my son," she said on one of those Fridays. "Lighter, more here." "I'm trying, Mum. Trying to be better." It was during one of these dinners that Beatrice casually mentioned something that made Raphael stop chewing. "You know, I was talking to Julia, my friend from university. She works at Alistair Bank, and she told me something strange about the Barrett family. Apparently, Barrett Textiles isn't doing as well as it seems. There are rumors that the company is in serious financial trouble." Raphael felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of problems?" "I don't know the details. Julia couldn't say much. Banking secrecy and all that. But she hinted that the situation is delicate. Big debts. Possibility of bankruptcy." After dinner, Raphael went home and did something he knew was questionable but necessary. He used his contacts in the financial market to discreetly investigate the situation of Barrett Textiles. What he discovered in the next few weeks left him shocked and furious. The company was bankrupt, completely bankrupt. Debts with suppliers, with banks, accumulated labor lawsuits. And there were indications of accounting fraud to mask the situation. Philip Barrett was desperate, the entire family was, and the marriage to Marianne was not just a romantic union, it was a rescue operation. The Alistair family had deep connections in the London banking system. Marianne's father, Roger Alistair, was a respected retired executive with important relationships. The marriage would bring not only prestige, but access to credit lines that could save Barrett Textiles. Raphael found leaked emails, documents pointing to negotiations between the families. They weren't concrete proof, but enough to form a clear picture. Marianne was being used. Raphael's first reaction was anger, a deep, visceral anger. He could destroy Philip with this information. He could expose everything to Marianne, to the families, to the market. He could end the engagement in seconds. But then he remembered Dr. Helen's words about manipulation, about control, about truly changing. He scheduled an extra therapy session. "If I use this information to separate them, I won't be any different from Philip. I'll be manipulating the situation for my benefit," Raphael said, pacing the office. "But if I say nothing, she'll marry based on lies. She'll tie her life to a man who sees her as a financial solution." "What do you think is the right answer?" Helen asked. "I don't know, that's why I'm here." "Raphael, you can offer the information without using it as a weapon. You can give her the knowledge without asking for anything in return. Let her decide what to do. That would be respecting her autonomy." Raphael spent days pondering, but in the end, the decision was made. He wouldn't use the information. Not yet. First, he needed to prove his genuine change. He needed to win back Marianne's trust for who he was now, not by exposing who Philip really was. If she chose to stay with her fiancé anyway, Raphael would accept it. But she deserved to make that choice with clarity about who he, Raphael, had become. And if the truth about Philip came out, it needed to be naturally, not through manipulation. Raphael decided to keep what he knew as a last resort. Only if it seemed Marianne was truly in danger or being irreversibly deceived would he intervene. Otherwise, he would let fate take its course. It was the hardest thing he had ever done, to have the power to destroy his rival and choose not to use it. June arrived, bringing the characteristic London chill. Raphael maintained his transformed routine, but added something new: volunteering. He started teaching basic construction concepts to young people, at an NGO in the East End, sharing knowledge that could help them find employment. It was something his mother had always asked him to do, and he had always found excuses. Now, every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, there he was, teaching basic structural calculations and site safety. It was Beatrice who spread the news in social circles, and that's how Marianne found out. She unexpectedly appeared at one of the Institute's events, where Raphael was talking to an artist about his layering painting technique. When he saw her approach, his heart raced. "Can I talk to you?" she asked, and there was something different in her voice, less cold, more curious. They went out to the garden again as if that were their space for difficult conversations. The June sky was clear and starry, rare for London. "I heard you're teaching classes to young people in the East End," Marianne began. Raphael nodded. "Yes, twice a week. They're incredible kids, Murray. So hungry for opportunity. Reminds me of how I was." "And work? How are you managing to balance it?" "I learned to delegate. I discovered that my team is much more capable than I imagined, and that the world doesn't end if I'm not supervising every screw of every project." He gave a small smile. "It took 3 decades, but I'm finally understanding what balance is." Marianne studied him in silence for a moment. "You really have changed." "I'm trying. Every day. Sometimes I still make mistakes. I still pick up my phone compulsively or get anxious when I'm not solving problems. But I'm learning to breathe, to trust, to be present." "Why, Raphael? Why now?" It was the question he expected. "Because seeing you at that event a few months ago was like a punch to the gut. I realized I spent the last 3 years building concrete things while my real life was crumbling. You left because I wasn't there. And you were right to go. I didn't deserve you then. And you think you deserve me now? I don't know. But I know I'm a better person than I was. And I know that if I had a second chance, I would do things differently. Not out of obligation, but because I truly understood what matters." Marianne hugged herself, the night's chill starting to bother her. Raphael took off his blazer and offered it. She hesitated, but accepted, wrapping herself in the fabric that still carried his warmth and scent. "Raphael, I'm confused," she admitted, and the vulnerability in her voice made her seem young again. "When you left my life, it hurt a lot. Much more than I let on. It took me months to compose myself. And when I met Philip, he was everything you weren't. Present, attentive, predictable, secure. But not passionate." "No," she agreed, and the word hung between them like a confession. "Not the way you and I were. But passion fades, Raphael. We mature. We learn to value stability, companionship." "Do you really believe that, or are you trying to convince yourself?" Marianne didn't answer. Her eyes filled with tears again. "It's not fair. It's not fair that you come back now, changed, being everything I always wanted you to be. It's not fair to make me doubt a choice that was already made. I don't want to be unfair. I don't want to cause you pain. I just want you to know that there's an option, that you don't have to settle for safe if what you want is alive. What if I give you a chance and you go back to being the workaholic you were? What if this is just a phase? What if you disappoint me again?" Raphael took a deep breath. It was the hardest and fairest question. "I can promise you I'll try every day not to be that man. But I can't promise you perfection. I'll fail sometimes, I'll have relapses. But the difference is that now I know I have a problem, I'm treating it, and I have tools to deal with it. It's not a magic cure, Mari. It's constant work. I need to think, I need time. You have. 6 months until the wedding, I'll wait as long as it takes." Marianne returned the blazer, as if she needed to create physical distance to think clearly. "I need to go. Philip is waiting for me." She walked away quickly. Raphael stayed in the garden, watching her leave, heartbroken but also hopeful. For the first time she had admitted there was doubt. For the first time she had acknowledged that she didn't love Philip in the same way. The following days were torturous for Raphael. He didn't try to contact Marianne, but he thought about her constantly. During therapy sessions, Helen helped him process the anxiety. "You did what you could, Raphael. You showed genuine change. You offered an alternative. Now you need to respect her time and her decision. Forcing anything would be reverting to old patterns of control." Raphael knew she was right, but it was frustrating, especially as the wedding approached. Of 6 months, less than 4 now remained. September was getting closer. It was on a July afternoon that everything changed. Raphael was in his office when he received a call from an unknown number. "Hello? Raphael Miller?" The voice was male, young, nervous. "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Thomas Sinclair. I'm a friend of Philip Barrett. Well, I was a friend. I need to talk to you. It's about Marianne Alistair. Raphael sat up straight in his chair. What about her? I can't talk over the phone. Can we meet? It's urgent. They arranged to meet at a discreet cafe in Mayfair. Thomas was a man in his mid-30s, well-dressed but visibly uncomfortable. He ordered an espresso and got straight to the point. I know you and Marianne used to date. I know you still have feelings for her, and I know she's going to make a terrible mistake if she marries Philip. Raphael felt his pulse quicken. Go on. Philip and I met at university. We were always close. But lately, he's changed. He's desperate. His family's company is broke, Raphael. Completely broke. Frauds, debts, lawsuits. It's a disaster. And the marriage to Marianne isn't about love. It's about saving the Barrett family from ruin. Raphael feigned surprise, although he already knew all this. What do you mean? Marianne's father has connections in the banking system. Philip thinks that by marrying her, he'll get access to credit lines that will save the company. There are contracts already drafted, negotiations between the families. Marianne knows nothing. She thinks she's marrying for love. Why are you telling me this? Thomas sighed heavily. Because I have a conscience. Because Marianne is a good person who doesn't deserve to be used. And because, as much as Philip is my friend, what he's doing is wrong. He says he developed real feelings for her, that it started as a strategy but turned into love. But I know him. I know when he's being sincere and when he's deluding himself. And why don't you tell her yourself? Because she doesn't know me. I'm just another friend of the fiancé, but you. She knows you, she loved you. If the information comes from you, it will carry weight. It will have credibility. Raphael was silent, processing everything. It was exactly what he had discovered on his own. But now he had someone from the inside willing to confirm everything. It was the perfect ammunition to destroy the engagement. Do you have proof? Raphael asked. Thomas pushed an envelope across the table. Emails, messages, excerpts from contracts, everything I could gather without Philip suspecting. Raphael picked up the envelope but didn't open it. Why now? Why not before? Because Philip confronted me yesterday. He found out I was uncomfortable with the situation. We argued. We ended our friendship. And I realized I can't stay silent. My conscience won't let me. After Thomas left, Raphael stayed in the cafe, holding the envelope. His first instinct was to open it, read everything, rush to Marianne, and expose the sham. But then he remembered his conversation with Helen. He remembered his promise not to manipulate the situation. He took the envelope to his next therapy session. The universe is testing me, Raphael said, tossing the envelope onto the small table between him and Helen. I have everything I need here to end this engagement. Concrete proof that Philip is using Marianne, and I'm dying to use it. But you taught me that manipulation is manipulation, even when done with good intentions. If I give this to Marianne, I'll be controlling the narrative. I'll be deciding for her. And what's the alternative? Raphael thought for a long moment. Give her the information without an agenda. Tell her what I know, show her the proof, but make it clear that the decision is hers. That I'm not doing this to win her back, but because she deserves to know the truth. Can you do that genuinely, without expectation of reward? I don't know, but I have to try. Raphael spent the night rehearsing what he would say. The next day, he sent a message to Marianne asking to talk. Something important. Urgent. She took hours to respond, but eventually agreed to meet him at the same cafe where he had met Thomas. When Marianne arrived, she looked tired. There were dark circles under her eyes as if she hadn't been sleeping well. She sat across from him with a defensive posture. What's so urgent, Raphael? He took a deep breath and pushed the envelope across the table. Before you open this, I need you to know that I'm not doing this to manipulate you or to bring us closer. I'm doing it because you deserve to know the truth. What you do with this information is entirely your decision. Marianne looked at the envelope with suspicion. What are you talking about? About Philip, about the marriage, about the true reasons behind the engagement. She turned pale. How dare you? Marianne, please, just read it. Afterward, If you want to hate me, if you want to send me away, if you want to go through with the marriage even knowing everything, I will respect that. But you need to know." With trembling hands, Marianne opened the envelope and began to read. Marianne read every page, every email, every contract excerpt. Raphael watched her face cycle through a sequence of emotions: confusion, disbelief, anger, pain. When she finally finished, her hands were trembling. She put everything back into the envelope with mechanical movements, as if she were in shock. "Marianne," Raphael began, but she raised her hand, asking for silence. Tears streamed down her face, but she wasn't sobbing. She just let them fall, silent and devastating. "He used me," she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. "From the beginning, everything was calculated." His friend, Thomas, said Philip claims to have developed real feelings, that it started as a strategy but became real. "And you believe that?" The question came loaded with bitterness. "It doesn't matter what I believe. What matters is what you believe. What matters is what you feel." Marianne closed her eyes, breathing with difficulty. "I need to go. I need to confront him. Do you want me to come with you?" "No. This I need to do alone." She picked up the envelope and stood up, but before leaving, she looked at Raphael with an intensity that pierced him. "Why did you do this? Why did you tell me?" "Because you deserve the truth. Because even if you never want to see me again, you don't deserve to build a marriage on lies. You knew this could end my engagement." "Yes. And benefit you." "Also yes. But I would have done it even if there were no chance of us getting back together. Some things are more important than what I want." Marianne nodded slowly, processing. "Thank you. As much as it hurts now, thank you for telling me." She left the cafe, leaving Raphael alone with his cold coffee and his heart in his throat. He didn't know what would happen now. He didn't know if he had done the right thing. He only knew he couldn't have done otherwise. The next few days were absolute silence. Marianne didn't reply to messages, didn't answer calls. Raphael respected her space, although he was consumed by worry. It was Beatrice who eventually brought news, gathered through the London high society gossip network. "There was a scandal," Beatrice recounted during a Sunday lunch at Mrs. Celia's house. Marianne confronted Philip in front of his family. It was a disaster. Shouting, accusations, his mother having a fit. Philip admitted the engagement started as a financial strategy, but swore he genuinely fell in love. Marianne didn't believe him. She called off the wedding on the spot. Raphael felt a mix of relief and guilt. "How is she?" "I don't know. She's isolated herself. Not even her family can talk to her properly. All I know is she returned the ring and said she never wants to see Philip again." The following weeks were silent. Raphael didn't attempt contact, though he thought of Marianne constantly. He continued his routine, his classes at the NGO, his therapy. He processed with Helen the confused feelings of having caused pain to someone he loved, even while doing the right thing. "You gave her autonomy," Helen repeated. "You gave her information and let her decide. That is respect, Raphael, not control." It was in late August that Marianne finally showed a sign of life. A simple message. "Can we talk?" They met in Hyde Park, on a bench near the lake. Marianne looked thinner, more tired, but there was something different in her eyes, a clarity that wasn't there before. "Thank you for respecting my space," she began. "How are you?" "Better than I expected. Worse than I'd like." A sad smile. "I'm doing therapy too. Realizing I stayed with Philip for the wrong reasons. Security, fear of getting hurt again, family pressure, but not love, not the kind that matters." "I'm sorry I caused that. Don't be. You saved me from a gigantic mistake. I was going to marry a man I didn't love, who saw me as a solution to financial problems. That's not life, Raphael, that's a prison." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the ducks on the lake. "What about us?" Raphael finally asked cautiously. "Is there any possibility for us?" Marianne turned to face him. "I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. You really have changed. I see that, but I'm scared, Rafa. Very scared of getting hurt again, of believing and being disappointed. I understand. But, she took a deep breath, I'm willing to try, slowly. No promises, no pressure, just two. Friends recognizing each other, rebuilding trust. Raphael's heart raced. Friends, for now, I need to trust you again before I can love you again. It needs to be a process. Can you respect that? I can. I promise. No promises, remember. Just actions. Raphael smiled. No promises. Just actions. They began meeting weekly for coffee. Long conversations about everything and nothing. Raphael talked about his classes at the NGO, about his progress in therapy, about his improved relationship with his mother and sister. Marianne shared her fears, her insecurities, her healing process after the breakup. There was no physical contact, no kisses, no touch beyond an occasional goodbye hug. It was frustrating sometimes, but Raphael understood the need. Trust wasn't built overnight. In September, during a stroll at an art fair in Shoreditch, Marianne stopped before a painting called New Beginnings. It was an abstract canvas with layers of colors, each showing through the next, creating depth and complexity. That's how I feel, she said, still looking at the artwork. Layers upon layers, the past still visible beneath the present, but creating something new. Raphael stood beside her, also observing. Do you think one day these layers will form something beautiful? I think they already are. She turned to him. You're being patient with me, Raphael, respecting my time, showing with actions, not with words. It's all I can do, and all I want to do. That night, after dropping Marianne off at home, Raphael received a message from her. Thank you for today, for everything. I'm starting to believe again. It was in October that the first test came. Raphael received a proposal to personally lead a massive project in Southampton, a commercial tower that would be the construction company's largest venture. It would require constant presence on site for at least 6 months, meetings in London twice a week at most. The Raphael of 3 years ago would have accepted without a second thought. It was a golden opportunity. But the Raphael of now hesitated. He took the proposal to his therapy session. If I accept, I'll distance myself from Marianne just when we're rebuilding something. I'll repeat the pattern that destroyed us. But if I refuse, I could be harming the company. It's the biggest contract we've ever had. Is there an alternative? Helen asked. Yes, I can delegate the project to Robert, my partner. He's competent, perhaps even more than me in some aspects, but that means giving up personal leadership. And how do you feel about that? Raphael thought honestly. Scared, like I'm abandoning responsibility, but also relieved, like I'm finally choosing what matters. Then you already know the answer. Raphael refused to personally lead the project. He handed command over to Robert, remaining only as a remote supervisor. The decision caused surprise among the partners, but they respected it. And when Raphael told Marianne during one of their weekly coffees, he saw tears in her eyes. You really did that? I did. Because a building in Southampton will still be there after it's finished. But you, Mari, you are unique. And if I lose you again by choosing work, I'll never forgive myself. It was at that moment that Marianne took his hand across the table, the first real touch in months. I'm proud of you. Their hands remained intertwined for the rest of the coffee. It was a small step, but it meant everything. November brought another challenge. Raphael had a real emergency on a construction site, a serious structural problem that required immediate attention. It was the same day as an important exhibition opening that Marianne had curated, an event he had promised to attend. Raphael was torn, but this time he did things differently. He called her, explained the situation honestly, apologized, and asked if she would understand. Is it really an emergency? Marianne asked, and there was tension in her voice. Yes. If I don't go, people could get hurt. But I understand if you don't believe me. I understand if this brings back bad memories. Silence on the other end, then a sigh. Go. Solve the problem. But keep me informed, okay? And we'll talk later. I promise. Sorry, Murray. Raphael solved the structural problem in 2 hours, but arrived at the event when it was already ending. Marianne was still there, talking to visitors. When she saw him, she excused herself and went over to him. Did you manage to solve it? Yes, no one got hurt. The structure is safe. Raphael waited for anger, for disappointment, but Marianne simply nodded. All right, it was a real emergency. You warned me. You kept me informed. It's different from simply not showing up. You're not mad. I'm disappointed not to have you here all night, but I understand, and, more importantly, you communicated. Before you would just disappear and send a message hours later. This is growth, Rafa. They talked late into the night, sitting on the steps of the now-closed institute. They spoke about expectations, about communication, about how to deal with the reality that emergencies happen. For the first time, they felt they were building something healthy, something based on honesty and flexibility. I love you, you know, Raphael said suddenly, the words escaping before he could filter them. Marianne looked at him surprised. I know, and I'm getting there. Not completely yet, but I am. How much time do you need? I don't know, but I know I want to keep trying. And it was enough. December arrived, bringing the characteristic warmth of London's summer. Raphael and Marianne had been officially together for 2 months, since that October night when they finally kissed after a simple dinner at an Italian restaurant in Clerkenwell. It was a slow kiss, laden with history, with pain overcome, with renewed hope. And it marked the official beginning of a relationship completely different from what they had before. This time there were rules, weekly honest conversations about how each one was feeling. Clear work boundaries that Raphael did not cross. Individual therapy for both and, eventually, couples therapy sessions to learn to deal with conflicts in a healthy way. It was hard work. It required conscious effort every day. But it worked. The biggest test, however, was yet to come. In January, as they were planning a weekend trip to Brighton, Raphael received a call that left him pale. It was from a multinational construction company based in New York City. They offered him the leadership of an entire division, a massive urban project in another global metropolis. Astronomical salary. International. Prestige, the ultimate achievement for any civil engineer. Raphael scheduled an extra session with Helen that same afternoon. It's everything I've ever professionally dreamed of, he said, pacing nervously around the office. It's the pinnacle of my career, an opportunity that will never come again. And accepting means moving, spending at least 3 years away. Marianne has a career here, family, friends. I can't ask her to drop everything to follow me. Have you talked to her? Not yet. I'm afraid of her answer. Afraid she'll say no and I'll resent it. Afraid she'll say yes and regret it later. Afraid to refuse and spend the rest of my life wondering what if. Helen was silent for a moment. Raphael, can I ask you a difficult question? Of course. Do you really want to go, or do you want to run away? The question caught him by surprise. What do you mean? You're building something real here, a solid relationship, a balanced life, deep connections. Is it comfortable? No. Is it scary? Yes. And when we're scared, our tendency is to run, to go back to the familiar. And what's familiar to you? Work, Raphael replied slowly. It's always been work. When things get emotionally difficult, I dive into work. Then you need to be honest with yourself. Is this change about professional growth or about running from the discomfort of emotional growth? Raphael spent the entire night thinking. The next day he talked to Marianne. They were in his apartment, she making coffee while he tried to find the right words. I received a job offer, he finally said. In New York City. Leadership of an international division. 3 years at least. Marianne stopped what she was doing. And you want to accept? I don't know, it's incredible. Professionally. But it means moving away from you, from everything we've built. What if I went with you? Raphael didn't expect that. You would do that? Marianne sat across from him, taking his hands. I asked if I would. I didn't say I would. I need to be honest, Rafa. My life is here. My job at the institute, which I love, my family, my friends. I can't just drop everything and follow you to the other side of the world. I know. And I wouldn't ask that. But there's something I need to ask you. Do you really to go, or are you using this as an escape? Raphael smiled sadly. My therapist asked me the same thing. And what was your answer? That I need to think more. That maybe I'm scared of the idea of continuing to grow here, of facing my demons, of building something real and permanent. And that New York City would be a way to go back to what's safe. Constant work. No time to feel. Marianne squeezed his hands. Then you already know the answer. Raphael spent a week thinking. He talked to Beatrice, to Mrs. Celia, to Helen. Everyone had opinions, but the decision had to be his. It was during a morning walk in Hyde Park that clarity finally came. He didn't want to go. He wanted to stay. He wanted to continue building his life in London, alongside Marianne, close to his family, teaching at the NGO, balancing work and personal life. New York City would just be a luxurious escape, a return to old patterns disguised as a professional opportunity. Raphael declined the offer. When he told Marianne, she cried, Are you sure? It's a unique opportunity. I'm sure, because the true unique opportunity is here. With you. With the life we're building. Money and prestige I can get in other ways. But this, what we have, is irreplaceable. It was at that moment that Marianne said for the first time since they had reconnected, I love you. The 3 words hung in the air like a precious gift. Raphael felt tears burn his eyes. I love you too. Always have. They kissed right there, in the middle of the living room, sealing a commitment that was much deeper than any employment contract. The following months were about building. Raphael and Marianne decided to move in together, finding an apartment in Chelsea that blended his modern style with her classic taste. The move was gradual, careful, always respecting each other's space. It was in March that Raphael's past returned unexpectedly. He received a letter from an address in Reading. When he opened it, his heart stopped. It was from Arthur Miller, his father. The letter was short. Arthur said he had been sober for 5 years. He said he was sick, not specifying what. He asked for a chance to talk, to explain, to apologize. He didn't ask for forgiveness, just a meeting. Raphael was paralyzed for days. Marianne found the letter on the table and read it. What are you going to do? She asked gently. I don't know. Part of me wants to ignore it. He abandoned me, abandoned my mother, my sister. He has no right to come back now. And the other part, Raphael sighed. The other part wants answers, wants to understand why, wants to close this cycle. Then maybe you should go. Not for him. For you. It took 2 weeks to gather courage, but Raphael finally went. Marianne offered to go along, but he preferred to go alone. Arthur lived in a simple house in Reading. When he opened the door, Raphael barely recognized him. The man who had abandoned him at 7 was now in his early 60s, grey-haired, too thin, with tired eyes. Raphael. His voice trembled. Arthur. Raphael couldn't bring himself to call him father. They talked for hours. Arthur explained that he was an alcoholic, that he had been battling addiction since he was young, that he left the family because he thought it would be better for everyone, that he spent decades lost, drifting from city to city, job to job, that he finally achieved sobriety 5 years ago through a support group, that he recently discovered a serious heart condition and realized he might pass away without ever having apologized. Raphael listened to everything with a mixture of anger, sadness, and surprisingly, compassion. In the end, he said, I can't completely forgive you, not now, maybe never. You hurt us too much. You hurt my mother, who worked to exhaustion to raise us alone. But I understand that you're human, that you made mistakes, and that you're trying to do better now. It's all I can ask for, Arthur said, tears streaming down his aged face. Raphael left that meeting emotionally exhausted, but also lighter, as if he had released a weight he had carried for 30 years. He processed everything with Helen in subsequent sessions, understanding how that abandonment had shaped his entire life, his fears, his choices. In April, during a lazy Sunday morning, Raphael and Marianne were in their pajamas in the kitchen making coffee when he simply said, "Marry me." Marianne almost dropped the coffee maker. "What?" "Marry me. It doesn't have to be now. It doesn't have to be a huge ceremony, but I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to build a family. I want to grow old by your side. I want everything. Raphael Miller, are you proposing to me in your pajamas?" "I am. Because that's how I love you. Real, imperfect, authentic. Without grand theatrical gestures, just you and me being who we really are." Marianne started to cry, but she was smiling. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." They hugged right there, in the middle of the kitchen, with half-finished coffee and crumpled pajamas, and it was perfect. Raphael hadn't prepared a ring, hadn't rehearsed a speech, but he had certainty, and he had love, and for the first time in his life he had presence. 2 months later, in June, they had an intimate engagement party on their apartment balcony. Close friends, family, some colleagues. Mrs. Celia cried with happiness to see her son finally happy. Beatrice gave an emotional speech about never giving up on that love, and, to Raphael's surprise, Arthur appeared discreetly, invited by Marianne, without Raphael knowing. "I thought you should have the chance to have your father present at this moment," she explained, "even if the relationship is still complicated." Raphael was frozen when he saw his father there. But then, on an impulse that surprised him, he walked over to him and offered a hug. It wasn't complete forgiveness, but it was a beginning. As the party continued, Raphael and Marianne moved to the edge of the balcony, observing the illuminated city. London stretched out before them, chaotic and beautiful, full of possibilities. "We made it," Marianne said, resting her head on his shoulder. "We really made it." "Yes, but it wasn't easy. And it won't be easy from now on either. We'll argue, I'll fail sometimes, you'll get frustrated with me. I'll work too much at some point and you'll have to bring me back to reality. I know, but the difference is that now we know how to deal with it. We have tools, we have communication, we have real commitment." Raphael pulled her closer. "Do you know what I've learned in these 2 years since I met you again?" "What?" "That true love isn't a problem-free fairy tale. It's the daily choice of two imperfect people who decide to evolve together. It's facing challenges with courage and partnership. It's about being present even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult." Marianne turned to kiss him slowly and deeply. In the background they heard the laughter of friends, soft music, the buzz of the party. But at that moment, there were only the two of them. "To the future," Marianne toasted with her champagne glass. "To the future," Raphael echoed. "To a real life built day by day, brick by brick, together." And for the first time in his life, Raphael Miller felt complete, not because he had a woman by his side, but because he had finally learned to be present, to value what matters, to choose love over ambition, presence over absence, emotional growth over escape through work. He looked at Marianne, then at the city he had helped build, and finally into himself. And he realized that the most important work of his life was not any skyscraper or multi-million-pound project. It was who he had become, a better man, a present man, a man capable of loving and being loved. And that, he knew, was worth more than any international contract or professional recognition. It was worth more than everything. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope Raphael and Marianne's story has touched your hearts. Just as Raphael discovered that the most important constructions are those we build within ourselves and in the relationships we cultivate, we hope this narrative has inspired you to value what truly matters in your own lives. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life, relationships, and the constant journey of becoming better versions of ourselves. Tell us in the comments, do you believe in second chances in love? Have you experienced a profound transformation like Raphael's? We want to hear your stories and experiences. Until next time, and remember, It's never too late to rebuild, to change, to choose to be present in the lives of the people we love.